Slide with the notes. So, good morning to you, children, students. In previous class, I said about the blood stains. What are the blood stains? How they are used in forensic science? And forensic, as a forensic expert, they used as physical evidence, and all those we discussed. And the collection of blood stains. So what are the solvents to dissolve the blood stains collected by the investigating officer and the medical legal expert, and how to preserve them, and what are the substances resemble the blood stains, like rust stains, vegetables, all those we discussed in the previous chapter on the stains on the cloth, how to examine the stains on the cloth, and what is the general examination of the blood stains at the crime scene, and the shape and the description, how to describe the blood stains. All those you should learn. I said in the previous class. And what are the other parts of the blood stain resembling the blood stain? What are the parts the blood coming from? That means menstrual blood, whether how to differentiate the menstrual blood, hemoptysis blood, hematopoiesis blood, like that. And the age of the blood stains we discussed, and what are the tests to determine the blood stains, whether it is blood or not. Chemical tests. So I told you that the Benjamin test and the phenolphthalein test and the reagents of the Benjamin test and the phenolphthalein test. You should remember the all those things, because those will come as short notes or as a question in your practical or in your theory examination. So chemical tests are Benjamin test, phenolphthalein test, and the microscopic test. How to test the microscopics by using the Weber solution. And the microchemical tests, those are the principle based on the heme crystals, that those forms in the colored compounds with certain reagents. I told you Tieckmann's test, that is human crystal test, that is Tieckmann's test, and the hemochromogen crystal test. This is Takayama test, I told you in the previous class. And my spectroscopic examination, that means it based on the principle that the blood absorbs, the blood pigment present in the blood specimen absorbs certain rays from the spectrum, and according to that formation of dark bands, you should examine whether the blood is present or not in the blood specimen. This is called the spectroscopic examination. And forensic serology, I told you, analysis and the examination of the blood stains and the body fluids, called the forensic serology. Among those, there are two methods. Those are immunological methods. Under immunological methods, it is very, very important. The precipitin test, that means the anti-human combines with the serum. Anti-human serum forms a white precipitate. I told you in detail in previous class. This precipitin test is very, very important. It will come as essay question or short note question. And another immunological tests are anti-globulin consumption tests, and gel diffusion test, and double diffusion in agar gel. Those are the tests under immunological methods. And next is isoenzyme methods. This is also I told you in the previous class. Isoenzymes are molecules in a multiple molecular form, certain enzymes present in the blood. Those are determined by an alprophoresis method, or called isoenzymes. Under this heading, I told you the blood groups, ABO system, MN system, RS system. Everything we discussed in our previous class. ABO systems are Lance Taylor discovered the ABO system in 1930. Those constitutes the anti-agglutinogens and the agglutinins and the antibodies, antigens formation, clumping, and agglutination. You can describe the certain person belongs to certain blood group ABO. Like that. These blood groups and MNS system also, all human individuals possess these blood groups. RH system, I told you, 90% of the population Indians contains this RH positive. This is rabbit serum immunized against the rhesus monkey. So this RH system also we discussed, and the white cell antigens, HLA-B, and all those we discussed, and also group specific substances that the ABO system contains. The body tissues contains in lipoidal forms, agglutinogens contains in lipoidal form. Those lipoidal form contains persons are called as non-secretors, and those who contains water soluble form are called secretors. We discussed all these, and blood groups, exclusion of paternity, maternity, all those we discussed in previous chapter. Now today's class is DNA fingerprinting. 1 hour almost delayed this section. So DNA fingerprinting and artifacts. What is the DNA fingerprinting? DNA fingerprinting also called as DNA typing, genetic typing, and this is based on the principle that this technique of DNA fingerprinting is this DNA fingerprinting called as fingerprinting without examination of the fingers. No, it is not the fingerprinting, but the genetic mapping, which is unique for individuals like fingerprinting. That's why it is called as fingerprinting, DNA fingerprinting or genetic typing. It is the technique used that DNA is divided into fragments by a chemical process, and this pattern of dividing DNA into fragments forms a unique pattern. This is unique for each individual. This pattern is matched against the suspected blood specimen of the suspected person. But this suspected person's specimen also, DNA also fragmented. There is the same procedure, and these two patterns compare. These two patterns match each other, then the test is positive. The error is only 1 in 30 billion. 30 billion population. It is 100% accuracy, and it is first demonstrated by this DNA fingerprinting is postulated by Alec Jeffries in 1985, and this DNA fingerprinting first solved 2 murder cases. So this DNA fingerprinting is very interesting and very useful in the forensic practice, and it is the process. I told you that the DNA is divided in fragments. This DNA, you know, all in your genetic chapter in physiology, I think you all know well, acquainted with this genes and chromatin or genome and DNA. So I will tell briefly. Every human body contains cells which constitutes tissues and organs of our body. So these cells contain genetic material, chromosome located in the nucleus, and the DNA fragments in the chromosomes. DNA is present in the chromosomes. 23 pairs of chromosomes from the biological father and 23 from the mother constitutes the chromosome. Total 46 pairs. Each gene each gene has function to produce proteins. These proteins perform certain particular functions, and also these genes are used to transmit hereditary from parents to children. These genes carries some hereditary function also. So the genes made up of DNA. DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid, and each chromosome consists of these DNA in a single strands, and these single strands coiled spirally and forms a double helix. These helix structurally stabilized by some bonds, base bonds called histones. These histones and the DNA constitutes the chromatin. So each nucleotide is composed of phosphates and hydrogen and deoxyribonucleic acid and nitrogen base. Each DNA nucleotide is composed of phosphate, deoxyribose sugar, and nitrogen base. These bases are adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. Adenine always unites with the guanine, and cytosine unites with the thymine. Adenine and guanine has combined with 2 bonds, and cytosine and thymine combines with 3 bonds of hydrogen bonds, which are covalent bonds. These bonds spirally coiled to form a double helix. DNA helix running in opposite direction, and this opposite direction forms AT, GC, or adenine always combines with guanine. So AG, CT, or the stands like a ladder, steps in the ladder. So in between the active base pairs of DNA double helix stand, there are also some inactive base pairs. These inactive base pairs are called junk DNA. These inactive base pairs has the property, these inactive base pairs constitutes 95% of the 90 to 95% of the total DNA structure, and these junk DNA has the property of divides at various sites to form certain unique patterns. This junk DNA has different sites where you can divide the DNA with certain nucleases, endonucleases, restriction called as restriction endonucleases. By using this enzyme, this junk DNA at the place of junk DNA, these DNAs are divided into fragments. These fragments shows so variability. That means each person has his own unique character at the particular site of DNA, when dividing the DNA into fragments. These junk DNA as short sequences of bases repeat themselves. Those are repeat themselves again and again, like GCTA, GATA, GATA, GCTA, like that. They will repeat. At these sites, if you divide the DNA into fragments, they show variability. So this shows hypervariability from person to person. This hypervariability is called as satellite DNA. This shows extremely hyper degree of variations from person to person. So these are called as variable number tandem repeats, VNTR, or mini satellites. If you divide these GCTA, GATA with the different endonucleases, and these variations are called variable number tandem repeats. Selected regions of variable number tandem repeats are broken into fragments using special enzymes called restriction endonucleases. These variations, this is the base for DNA fingerprinting. So at the variable number tandem repeats, with the use of restriction enzymes, endonucleases, these sites are divided into fragments. So these fragments has unique character to form a pattern of fingerprint. It varies from person to person. So unique character. So some methods to perform this DNA fingerprinting. What are those methods? Number one is restriction fragment length polymorphism, and second is polymerase chain reaction. Restriction fragment length polymorphism is by two types: single locus probes and with multi-locus probes. So what is restriction fragment length polymorphism? So you collect the DNA from the specimen collected at the crime scene or at the suspected weapon, from the suspected weapon. Then it is all, this procedure all, remember this procedure all includes forensic science laboratory only. This comes under forensic science branch, but every forensic expert or every doctor who will work in the government sector should learn all this. But all this procedure will conduct at state forensic science laboratory. So DNA is extracted from the specimen, and this tissues, how to extract the DNA from the tissues collected from the crime scene. These tissues are frozen at -20 degrees centigrade, and from frozen part of the specimen, you have to collect the DNA by three processes: dissociation or disruption of the cells, and dissociation of the DNA into proteins, and addition of extractant to separate the bulk of the tissues from the bulk of the proteins from the DNA, and again DNA is separated from the RNA. These four processes by these four processes, number one is disruption, dissociation, and separation of the additional proteins and separation of the RNA. By this process, RNA is isolated. This isolated RNA is exposed to UV spectrophotometry, and then DNA is digested with endonucleases that I told you previously. Restriction enzymes, restriction enzyme polymorphism, restriction endonucleases, and then this isolated digested DNA is cut into different sites. I told you DNA is divided into fragments at these VNTR sites, and these formed this fragmented DNA is due to VNTR, variable number tandem repeats. So at those sites you should divide the DNA into fragments. This procedure is repeated with several enzymes and different sites. So after dividing the DNA in several sites with several restriction endonucleases, the detailed genetic fingerprint is developed. It is unique per person to person. This digested DNA is then run along the agarose gel. This agarose gel, after run on agarose gel, then transferred into a nylar membrane. This from agarose gel, the DNA fragments, the pattern of fingerprint, DNA fingerprint is transferred to nylon membrane by using a capillary transfer method of Sutherland. After this, hybridization is conducted onto this pattern of fragmented DNA particle. After hybridization, wash the DNA and placed on an X-ray cassette with using auto radiograph by taking the X-ray film of this pattern by using single locus probes or multi-locus probes. Single locus probes are advantageous than multi-locus probes. Now in our India, in our state forensic science laboratories, only single locus probes can be used. By using these single locus probes, X-ray film is taken, and this is called as autoradiograph or autorad. This is the DNA fingerprint of the individual. After attaining the autoradiograph, this is the genetic fingerprint of that particular person. This pattern is seen as a bands, dark bands on the X-ray film, and these are unique for each individual. This pattern is compared with the suspected person's blood specimen by the same procedure. This is RFL, refraction fragment length polymorphism. Then PCR, polymerase chain reaction. It is very widely used in all the laboratories. In our COVID tests also doing with this technique only, polymerase chain reaction. It can be very useful, very easy to conduct. Even in a minimum quantity of specimen can be conducted, or degradation of material by certain contaminated particles also it can be used. This the advantage of this PCR technique is it can be amplified with million-fold technique. This material, minimum quantity of material can be amplified with minimum fold, can be amplified to million-fold. This amplified material, the DNA is isolated, and by heating it with 94 degrees centigrade, later temperature is lowered. Small segments of DNA is isolated and formed. After heating up to 94 degrees centigrade and lower the temperature, small fragments of DNA will be formed. These are called as primers. This is starting point of DNA duplication. Then temperature is raised again 72 72 degrees centigrade, and this rising of temperature causes copying of the primers by TAQ polymerases. These DNA TAQ polymers, after formation of DNA polymerases or TAQ polymerases, then the temperature is lowered. This cycle is repeated 30 times or more times, and then to produce a million copies of the DNA. These copies are the important to diagnose the blood stains. These DNA fingerprinting is fingerprinting when obtaining this autoradiograph or the fingerprint match are very helpful to detect the suspects or accused, or whether the blood stain is from person who was the accused can be identified by these two techniques. Detection of the so detection of amplification production of VNTR is by electrophoresis. After formation of million copies of DNA by the process of electrophoresis, the visualization of the DNA by polymerase chain reaction, the print is visualized by electrophoresis, fluorescent detection. The PCR techniques detects 36 samples at a time. By this PCR technique, 36 samples can be done at a time. Sensitization and qualitative method, and working using by all laboratories. This is very easy technique, can be used by all the laboratories to detect. So this is the two types of DNA fingerprinting. Number one is restriction fragment length polymorphism, and number two is polymerase chain reaction. Now, what are the samples or biological samples encountered in forensic medicine? That means samples for forensic DNA analysis. Blood can be sent, hair can be sent, semen in case of sexual assaults can be sent, hair can be sent to the forensic science laboratory to perform the DNA fingerprinting, and tissues, bone marrow, muscle, spleen, fingerprint scrapings or can be sent, mouth swabs can be sent, fetus muscle biopsy can be sent, salivary stains can be sent, from the cigarette ends can be sent to detect the salivary secretion from the cigarette end also. You can detect the DNA fingerprinting. Liquid blood can be sent to the forensic science laboratory by preserving very carefully seminal cells, vaginal cells, saliva, all those I told you. What are the forensic applications? Murders. In murders, the blood samples can be determinant factor to determine the accused or victim. Or this, it is a link between the suspect and victim. So sexual crimes. In sexual assaults, the vaginal stains or seminal stains can be do by DNA fingerprinting, and the accused can be caught. Paternity disputes. In paternity dispute cases, the blood of child and the mother and alleged father are printed for DNA fingerprinting. And also disputed maternity. That means when babies are exchanged in hospitals, or when the mother claims the false claiming of the child is her. Like that. Identification by mutilated remains. Mutilated remains in bomb blasts or aircraft injuries can be identified by DNA fingerprinting. And also identification of the bodies in exhumation, and also in extortion cases like salivary samples also is useful in extortion cases. It is also used in biological identification, and also it also used in DNA fingerprinting, also used in hit and run cases. That means when a vehicle hit and run away, you can collect the samples, suspect samples, compare with the samples, suspected vehicle sample, which are adherent to the tires on the body of the vehicle. Like that, it is a link, and it can be, it is most useful and 100% determinant factor, DNA fingerprinting. So these are all about blood stains and DNA fingerprinting. Next chapter is I will tell you the artifacts. Artifacts are one of the chapter. In this chapter, you will get some important short notes in this chapter. From this chapter, this artifact is any change caused or feature introduced in a body after death. It is either accidental change or physiological change which is unrelated for finding to the natural state of the body. This is likely to lead to misinterpretation. That means whether it is antemortem or postmortem. If you are not experienced with the artifact change, you can misinterpret the change that it is an antemortem injury, and the innocent person may be accused guilty with the opinion of the medical legal expert. So artifact is a structure or substance not normally present but produced by some external agency or action. Misinterpretation may lead to wrong cause and manner of death and miscarriage of the justice. The responsibility of the autopsy pathologist is very great. So what are the types of artifacts? Artifacts introduced between the death and autopsy. Artifacts are produced between death and autopsy. That means very short interval of death. That means agonal artifacts. That means when a person is dying for any other cause, either diseases, normal diseases, or any other cause, or any other injury, or any road traffic accident, any other injuries, or any other cause, he will go in a stage of agony due to stress. So this agony and the stress produce an aspiration of gastric contents, but the death is not due to the aspiration of the gastric contents. If you find during postmortem examination a gastric content in the bronchioles or the alveolus of the lung, it is not due to the actual cause of death. Like that, you can differentiate the artifact or original cause of death. These are agonal artifacts. Number one is regurgitation. So during this test, the gastric contents may regurgitate during the death. And the onset of asphyxia, if it is the cause of death is due to asphyxia, and due to asphyxia there is a anoxic stage of asphyxia, and this medullary anoxia causes some regurgitation of the gastric contents into the respiratory passages. This may not be mislead or misinterpret as original aspirated material into the lungs. And esophagogastromalacia, it is rarely seen, and during some severe head injury, the autodigestion of the stomach, the gastric contents may spill into the inferior part of the chest and may enter into the lung cavity or pleural cavity, and the surface may looks like grayish white or black. This also cannot be misinterpreted or mistaken as a cause of death. And number two is resuscitation artifacts. When a patient came to you with a severe breathlessness or cardiorespiratory arrest, and you should do the ABCD resuscitation. And if you are doing the resuscitation, you will definitely do the intubation, and next step cardiorespiratory resuscitation, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. And during this resuscitation, you should give there is a every person, every doctor on duty will give the injection, eternal intracardiacally or any other injection. So these injection marks should not be mistaken as injuries. And also you will put the DC shock, that means defibrillator applied on the chest wall. It will leave a contusion mark of the defibrillator. If you go to the wards or ICU or casualty, you can see the defibrillator. That means if you give the DC shock to the patient, not be mistaken as a contusion of the chest wall. Vigorous resuscitation, that means vigorous resuscitation may be done by some surgeons. They will be thoracotomy, they will be do, and they will massage the cardiac massage directly. So, some contusions on the cardiac area will not be misinterpretation or mistaken for actual injuries. And also ventilator, positive pressure ventilators may leave some injuries while intubating the tube. The person may injure by this intubating technique. Laryngoscope may cause abrasions and lacerations, and the thread will maybe the thread which you tied in to the tube may be misinterpreted as strangulation mark, and damage to the mouth, palate, and pharynx can be mistaken. Esophageal intubation produces gastric dilatation. If the intubated tube may wrongly goes to the gastric esophagus, and the gastric candidates may aspirate it due to false introduction of the ET tube, endotracheal intubation tube. And lacerations and abrasions may be caused by endotracheal intubation. Pneumothorax may be developed from subclavian. When if you give central venous line then to the subclavian, then the wrong prick may produce pneumothorax due to bleeding from the subclavian artery. Central line, have you ever seen central line? Central venous line. If you goes to the ICU and casualty, you can see all these procedures. Pulmonary wedge catheter can cause pneumothorax and hemothorax. That means any tension pneumothorax may be relieved by chest drain. These chest drains can cause these pneumothorax and hemothorax, but this is original cause of death is not due to this, but this cause of this pneumothorax is the wrong placement of the chest drains. Cervical collar used to stabilize the neck pain may simulate the ligature forward. These are all the resuscitation artifacts. And artifacts due to handling of the body. So after death, some artifacts will be produced by handling of the body. Rough handling of the body from one place to another place, or from place to where the incident has happened to home, or home to some place, and home to burial ground. So rough handling may be produced ribs, rib fractures, and bones fracture of the extremities. The cervical spine may be fractured. Contusion of the occipital regions can be seen due to the dead body may fall on supine position. So undertaker's fracture, in this heading, artifacts due to handling of the body, undertaker's fracture is an important short notes question. Undertaker's fracture is the fracture of between C6 and C7 due to rough handling. The fracture of the cervical spine due to subluxation of the lower cervical spine, and there is a fracture between the C6 and C7. This is called undertaker's fracture. And artifacts related to rigor mortis. That rigor mortis may be produce some artifact. That means the rigor mortis is useful to determine the cause of death and manner of death. But due to rough handling, the rigor mortis may be passed away, and you cannot give the original manner of death and original cause of death, time since death. So due to loss of rigor mortis, you cannot give the original time since death. Rigor mortis which affects heart may simulate the concentric hypertrophy of the heart. Rigor mortis which affects the stomach may simulate the hypertrophy of the stomach also. So artifacts related to postmortem lividity. That means postmortem hypostasis. The color of the postmortem hypostasis, usually the normal color is purplish blue or bluish purple, but certain poisons may change the color of the hypostatic area. That means some poisons, that means CO poisoning, the hypostasis may be look like cherry red color, and hydrogen cyanide poisoning, the hypostasis may be look like bright red color, and poisoning by nitrites and potassium chloride and aniline dyes may produce brown or chocolate color hypostasis. These will not mistaken for the changes in the hypostasis. Banding of the esophagus may be seen due to congestion of the tissues. Large petechia and ecchymosis may be seen behind the esophagus, between the spine of the cervical spine and the esophagus. This will not be mistaken for the original hemorrhages. Artifacts due to burns. So burns can produce, I told you in your dermal burns chapter, I told you heat ruptures may simulate certain some lacerations type of injuries. But these are the artifacts produced by burns. Heat hematoma, heat ruptures, all these are the artifacts produced by burns. And unburned groove on the neck due to color may simulate the strangulation mark. Artifacts in firearm wounds, that means firearm injuries, entrance wound, exit wounds. Entrance wound can be distinguished from the exit wound by presence of gunpowder and the margins, inverted margins like that. But these are changed by loss of gunpowder at the entrance wound, will not be mistaken as exit wound. And use of trocar for embalming, that means immediately after death, the body is embalmed with certain liquids to preserve the body, and it will shifted to the anatomy department after embalming. So trocar injury will not be mistaken as an injury, lacerated injury. Artifacts due to animal and insect bites. This is called anthropophagy. Rodents and may gnaw tissues and leave a wedge-shaped furrows. These will not be mistaken as injuries, and these injuries shows serrated margins, and the bites of dogs and cat bites will not be mistaken as an injuries. And artifacts in brain. Brain artifacts are very, very easy to diagnose. That means the convolutions of the brain may be flattened in edema, pulmonary edema or the brain edema, edema of the brain, the narrowing of the sulci and a flattening of the gyri will be seen. This is due to the edema of the brain tissue. You can differentiate the original flattening and narrowing of the sulci. It can be differentiated. Artifacts in liver. The undersurface of the liver in contact with transverse colon shows greenish coloration due to putrefaction. But it is not original change of liver. This is due to the contact between the transverse colon and the undersurface of the liver. It should not be mistaken. And the postmortem hemorrhages. Before the blood clots, postmortem injury may damage blood vessels and produce hemorrhage. After death, blood may collect in the pleural cavities due to wounds produced on the chest wall and lung tissue. Intercostal veins may bleed much after death also. Artifacts related to hair. That means after death, if you observe the beard of the dead person, the hair looks like grown hair. It is not originally grown hair. Immediately after death, the hair will not grow. The growth of the hair is stopped immediately after death. But it is due to the false appearance of growing of beard is due to shrinkage of the skin at that place, and due to this shrinkage, the bulb of the hair looks come outside and looks like a growing of the hair. It should not be mistaken as growth of the hair. Artifacts due to decomposition. So decomposition artifacts. What are those? Intense localized postmortem hypostasis of skin due to hypostasis. This displacement of internal pools of blood may be due to gases. That means after death, the blood collected on the depending part of the body may displaces one place to another place. It will not mistaken as bleeding from that area. In dead body lying on its back, blood accumulates in the posterior side. The body fluid may be found on the mouth and nose in decomposed bodies. Like that. Accumulation of blood in the tissues of the neck in drowning may simulate antemortem hemorrhage due to strangulation. Blebs formed due to putrefaction may be mistaken for blebs from burns. Regurgitated gastric juices may cause tanning of the skin of the face and neck, which may simulate antemortem burning. Separation of structures of skull in sutures of skull in child due to gases of decomposition within the brain may not be mistaken as injuries of the skull. Artifacts due to chemicals. Some automobile accidents or airplane crashes exposure to gasoline causes postmortem detachment of the epidermis. This will not be mistaken as injury. On exposure to air, the underlying dermis has a yellow or brown color as drying occurs. They resemble the thermal burns or abrasions. Artifacts due to refrigeration. Pink hypostasis is seen in bodies kept in cold storage. So this is not original hypostasis. Postmortem refrigeration of infants usually causes solidification of the subcutaneous fat in children, infants due to cold storage. If the infant dead body is stored in a cold storage, the subcutaneous fat may be solidified, which produces a prominent crease where there was a normal thin fold of the neck, which resembles strangulation mark. Embalming artifacts. Artifacts caused due to embalming. The trocar wound, I told you, the skin tends to become transparent due to the embalming liquids, and minor hemorrhages become visible, which may sometimes create problems. A homicidal stab wound may be enlarged by the embalmer. So through that, the trocar is introduced. With the lacerated or stab injury, the trocar is introduced and the embalming liquid may be introduced into the dead body. It may not be mistaken. And the trocar may also disturb the track of the weapon or the bullet and produce false tracks. The blood will clot and produce multiple clots within the pulmonary vasculature. So internal and exhumation artifacts. When the forensic expert or the government medical officer ordered to exhume the body and the digging out of the body from the already buried body and do the postmortem examination, and before digging, care should be taken unless rough digging out of the body may produce injuries to the body by digging person, and these may be mistaken as postmortem antemortem injuries. Toxicological artifacts, and that means if you some cases when you are doing postmortem examination, you should collect the samples and send to you. You have the responsibility of certain samples to send forensic science laboratory or regional forensic science laboratory for chemical analysis. If you are not collected samples like the brain, blood, and the liver, certain vital organs, parts, if you are not collected these organs samples carefully, you can produce some injuries to those organs, and those may be mistaken as artifacts. If you want to send the blood sample to pathology for culture and other investigations from the dead body, you should collect the blood very carefully. If you put a needle directly onto into the cardiac chambers and collect the blood, before putting the needle into the blood chamber, you have to sear the cardiac tissue with heated scalpel, and then only the seared, on the surface of the seared surface, only you should inject the needle and draw the blood. Like that, you have to take careful steps before collecting the samples or before collecting the samples to send the forensic science laboratory. Unless if you will not take the careful measures, then the blood or the tissues may contaminate. So all these artifacts are produced before death and autopsy. Artifacts introduced between death and autopsy. Artifacts introduced while doing autopsy. While you are doing postmortem examination, certain artifacts produced by a postmortem expert doing expert or postmortem attendant. So if you are not take measures, careful measures, then there may be artifacts induced by you. Air in blood vessels. Number one is air in blood vessels. Pulling of the dura while opening the head sagittal line will cause the air enter into the blood vessels at the top of the brain. This may simulate the air embolism. Similarly, air may enter into the veins of the neck and causes if you detect air, and you may mistaken as air embolism. Skull fractures. When you open the skull to examine the brain tissue, and if you sawing the skull bones, if you are not sawing the skull bones in a proper way, the internal brain may damage, and you may be mistaken as an antemortem injury of the brain tissue. Visceral damage. If you opening the, you all know how to open the removal of methods during postmortem examination. There are 4 types of methods. These methods can be applied to while doing the postmortem examination and while unmasking the visceral organs. If rough handling or doing the postmortem examination or carelessness of removing the organs, you may injure the visceral organs and you may mistaken as antemortem injuries. And the extravasation of blood. In case of suspected cranial injury, the body should be opened first and then the cardiovascular system compressed and the blood should be drained out, and then only you will open the skull cavity and examine the brain with bloodless field. And then also strangulation or hanging cases, you dissect the neck structures in bloodless field only, and that means you examine the structures. In case of head injury and this hanging cases, you examine the structures, neck structures on the brain tissue in bloodless field. Before opening the neck structures, the blood in the cranial cavity should be evacuated and the thoracic cavity should be evacuated. Depending on the injury, you have to evacuate the blood from the cranial or thoracic cavity. Fracture of hyoid bones. While doing the neck dissection, you should take very careful measures. By taking these careful measures, you cannot fracture the hyoid bone. It is one of the most important postmortem finding in strangulation cases. If you do the neck structures dissection carelessness, then the hyoid bone may be fractured, and you may be mistaken that it is antemortem fracture of hyoid bone. Injury to the blood vessels also happen while your dissection is rough. This is also toxicological artifacts, the contamination of the viscera and the stomach contents during autopsy, or all the samples are keeping in one container and sent to the forensic science laboratory. These are all produce some artifacts. So with this, we complete artifacts chapter and blood stains chapter. your assessment exam, the questions will be from infant deaths, remaining portion of the infant deaths and the blood stains. The assessment questions will be given. So you be prepared with the infant deaths chapter and blood stains chapter. Thank you for hearing this.